Figures like Candace Owens, Andrew Tate, and Ian Carroll make it a point to notice and explore the possibility that Israel may be responsible for society's problems, ushering in a trove of conspiracy thinking among young conservatives. Now, guys, what did I tell y'all 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago? What happened? We had Ian Carroll go on Joe Rogan, we had Candace Owens go on Theo Von, and we had Andrew Tate on Full Send. And they all talked about this to a degree. Whether it was Epstein, who you can and can't criticize, this discussion has been brought to the forefront. A discussion that prior to October 7th you would never be able to have. I call it the Great Noticing, some people call it the Great Awakening, but the genie's out the bottle is the point here. The truth is getting out there, and they can't handle it, man. This article right here, boom, why MAGA must expel the podcast Pied Pipers of anti-Semitism. Right? And they got Tucker Carlson, Andrew Tate, and Candace Owens. And Tucker isn't even like, he doesn't even talk about it. But again, once you get to a certain point and you get big enough, even like the smell of them thinking that you might be critical of Israel, they'll label you an anti-Semite, bro. And who wrote this article? This fucking loser, Daniela Greenbaum Davis. She writes, let's read through this article. Because these hit pieces are often used by the ADL, this idiot, and Media Matters, right? They write these hit pieces, then they use that to lobby to get you in trouble with your social media companies. So here it is. It is exactly when a political party or a movement wins power that dormant and definitional fights begin to break out. It's easy to find common cause when you have a common enemy, but once in power, the question becomes not what a party is against, but what it is for. The question now beginning to tear the MAGA movement apart. The answer, according to a troubling and increasingly ascendant voice on the right, is noticing, exposing, and fighting them boys. I spent countless hours consuming and producing media on both the right and the left, everything from live TV to podcasts and print. The ascendants of the voices on the right who are now taking not just a bigger share, but the biggest share of the marketplace is not an unhappy accident, but the product of an accurate read of both how the country is feeling and how younger Americans consume information. Savvy voices within new media understand where the puck is going, and they're skating to it. Figures like Candace Owens, Andrew Tate, and Ian Carroll make it a point to notice and explore the possibility that Jews in Israel may be responsible for society's problems, ushering in a trove of conspiracy thinking among young conservatives. Each figure has a particular niche inside the very brave truth teller firmament. Now, guys, right? What did I tell y'all 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago? What happened? We had Ian Carroll go on Joe Rogan, we had Candace Owens go on Theo Von, and we had Andrew Tate on Full Send. And they all talked about this to a degree. Whether it was Epstein, who you can and can't criticize, this discussion has been brought to the forefront. A discussion that prior to October 7th you would never be able to have, right? I call it the Great Noticing. Some people call it the Great Awakening. But the genie's out the fucking bottle is the point here. And now that the genie's out the bottle, you won't be able to put it back in. And you can see these organizations, these pro-censorship organizations are freaking out. Take Candace Owens, who has perfected the art of exploiting disillusionment. Owens now hosts the third most listened to podcast in America, the Wall Street Journal revealed this week, influencing the views of roughly 40 million people per month. She blends criticisms of cultural rot and elite hypocrisy with intentional outrageous balderdash, such as her fixation on Frankism, a tiny 18th century cult that is, in Owens' bizarre imagining, really behind globalist agendas, her flirtation with Holocaust denial, and her fascination with trying to prove that history's villains and power brokers like Joseph Stalin or Mustafa Kemal Ataturk were actually Jewish. Owens assumes, correctly, that most of her listeners don't know or remember that Stalin was actually a failed Eastern Orthodox priest, and Ataturk a militant secularist with Muslim parents. And here, obviously, she pulls the picture of when she's meeting with Kanye West. Owens is one of the biggest political voice on the internet. She has 5.6 million followers on Instagram, 6.6 million on X, 5.8 million on YouTube, and 4.2 million on TikTok. She unfortunately knows how to package some of the oldest calumnies against Jews in a way that feels fresh and edgy to her audience. She's funny, charismatic, and, for many, seems to have all the right enemies. For her loyalists, any rebuttals leveled against her are suspect. After all, the powerful people she's criticizing would want you to believe she is crazy. This is a vicious cycle that lures people into conspiratorial thinking and provides a kind of protective shell against actually inspecting any outlandish claims. Right, and that's Candace Owens. Now, it's funny. that this columnist is writing this and trying to write her off as a conspiracy theorist or whatever. But you guys want to know something interesting? It's actually the Trump administration that dropped the ball here and fucked up. Yeah, I know you're like, wait, hold on, whoa, what? Like, Mara, what are you talking about? Let me explain. When Donald Trump came into power, one of the chief things he mentioned was the declassification of certain historical events in American history, ones that the public has great interest in. John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, 9/11, and of course, Jeffrey Epstein. These are assassinations and or historical figures that the American public has a lot of questions on. But what I don't think the Trump administration foresaw was that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, has absolutely fucked up and failed in getting these documents out to the people quickly and timely, as Donald Trump wanted. When Donald Trump signed the executive orders, it was supposed to be done within a month or so. We're now going into mid-March, and we still don't have the documents. Pam Bondi's given a bunch of stall techniques, saying things like, oh, SDNY has the documents. Oh, the deep state is hiding the documents from me. Oh, right? Making all these fucking excuses. Oh, Kash Patel just got sworn in. We need more time, right? Then when they did actually do a reveal, what did they do? They gave the documents to some Twitter influencers that, quite frankly, no one knows about outside of Twitter, right? These people don't have platforms outside of Twitter. Washed up has-beens like Mike Cernovich, unknowns like DC Drano, and idiots like Jack Posobiec. They gave them the documents, right? Or faceless creators like Libs of TikTok, who no one fucking knows who the fuck she is, right? These are Twitter personalities. They gave them, not only did they give them Epstein binders, they gave them Epstein binders on flight manifests that had been around literally for years. Matter of fact, I had insult to injury because I knew this was going to happen. I had Ryan Dawson on the show. And we went over these flight manifests. The same flight manifests that fucking Pam Bondi gave to these idiots the next day. Because I made it a point to do a broadcast before she released these documents to show that, number one, they had already been out there, and I'm going to give you guys the documents before they did. When I did that stream, I dropped a link that had all the fucking shit there for you guys to be able to look at it. But when Pam Bondi released the documents to these influencer idiots, what did she do? She redacted some of the stuff. So what the Trump administration inadvertently did was shoot themselves in the foot by delaying the transfer of these documents and by giving them to a certain amount of people and just fucking fumbling this all over the place, right? Between Pam Bondi going on Fox News 20 times explaining why the documents still aren't out and her trying to justify her inability to get documents from her own fucking department, right? It created a lot of speculation from the public as to why this was occurring. Enter Ian, Carroll, and Candace Owens. So in the midst of this debacle where people aren't able to figure out why the fuck we still don't have the documents, Ian Carroll and Candace Owens go on two of the biggest podcasts right now. Ian Carroll went on Joe Rogan. Candace Owens went on Theo Von, right? Enormous podcasts with millions of subscribers on YouTube and huge listening bases on Spotify. On these interviews, obviously, since it's relevant, JFK and Epstein came up. Now, Jeffrey Epstein. You can't talk about Jeffrey Epstein unless you talk about Israel. Why? Because Jeffrey Epstein, for those that are unaware, and I'm going to give you a nice little succinct summary on who this individual was a billionaire that got his money from a guy named Les Wexner, a billionaire that owns a bunch of companies to include Victoria's Secret. His counterpart, Ghislaine Maxwell, was a socialite, British national, also Israeli. Her father, Robert Maxwell, was a known spy and intelligence asset for the Mossad. Robert Maxwell actually was critical in Israel being able to protect their nuclear program by arresting a guy named Mordecai Vanunu when he tried to go public with Israel's nuclear program with photos. But I digress. The point you need to understand here is that Jeffrey Epstein worked to blackmail, compromise people of enormous influence and power, whether government officials, celebrities, or even princes. And he did this to put himself in a position where he can insulate himself and protect himself because he had dirt on everyone. Okay? What he would do is, he and Ghislaine Maxwell would go to a lot of these parties. Ghislaine Maxwell had an enormous network of friends and acquaintances due to her work at the United Nations, the UN. She was an environmentalist that focused on the ocean, right? Sounds like a cool cause to be involved in. So she would be at a lot of these events where powerful people would be. She'd bring Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, who was funded and supported by Leslie Wexner, would bring Victoria's Secret models with them. Oh shit, who's this guy? He has all these hot babes with him. Wow. The women were provided to him by a guy named Jean-Luc Brunel. Jean-Luc Brunel was a model scout and finder. So he would give him of-age women for these parties, but then he also had a network of underage models that he would also provide to Epstein. So Epstein will go to these parties with these Victoria's Secret models and Ghislaine Maxwell. He looks super cool, billionaire, houses all over the fucking place. Hey, you should come hang out with me sometime. President Clinton, Prince Andrews. Sure. They show up at his house in Palm Beach. What they don't know is years before they had come to visit him and hang out with him in Palm Beach, he had a network of teenage girls running a massage operation. They would come to his house, massage him and then all of his guests in very inappropriate manners, and he'd pay them hundreds of dollars to do this. He had a network of like 5 to 10 high school girls that would do this. Right? Teenagers. So these individuals come to his house in Palm Beach. Next thing you know, bam, compromised. Gotcha, bitch. Now he owns you. Whether he brought you to his house in Palm Beach, his manor in New York City, his ranch in New Mexico, his houses in Paris, or the island that everyone famously knows. And once you were compromised, he would basically force you to do things for him. I'll give you an example of Bill Gates. Bill Gates, he made Bill Gates donate a bunch of money to MIT on his behalf. This is why Bill Gates stays away from the Epstein question anytime it's asked to him in public. So when Epstein died in 2019, everyone knew he didn't kill himself. His brother did an independent autopsy which revealed murder, right? Or nefarious intentions. The thing is that he had dirt on everyone. So that's how the Epstein operation worked, right? But the American public doesn't know this. All the American public knows about Jeffrey Epstein is it's some dude that sex trafficked minors. They don't really know about his background, links to Israel, intelligence, etc. How do we know that he was intelligence? I'll tell you why. Acosta, who was the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida for many years, admitted when pressed, why didn't you prosecute Epstein back in the 90s and early 2000s? And he said he was told that he was intelligence and to back off. So this is why if you do a Freedom of Information Act, you're going to see West Palm Beach FBI did indeed investigate Epstein. But they never brought federal charges to him. So he didn't get arrested until he got a state charge attached to him, which was a sweetheart deal, where he was able to go to jail during the day and then come home and sleep at night. Yes, I kid you not, chat. I know.
Welcome, punch!
So, with that said, that is how the Epstein network worked. But most Americans don't know this. So when Theo Von hosted Candace Owens and Joe Rogan hosted Ian Carroll, and they talked about Epstein, and the American public aren't getting answers from Pam Bondi because she's dragging her feet and she can't properly get these fucking documents out to the people, guess what? There's a void that needs to be filled. And that void that needs to be filled is filled with people that are curious. What the fuck are in these files that they're taking so long to give us? Enter Ian Carroll and Candace Owens. And they went in and talked about how it's a blackmail ring. Bam.
Gotcha, bitch.
Viral. Everyone's saying, holy shit. Because again, like I said, chat, the American public in general, especially the stupid boomer class, don't understand that Israel has done a bunch of shit to the United States to compromise our security, selling our secrets, and spied on us. And we're involved in some of the worst atrocities in American history. And it just so happens that the three things that they picked to declassify, JFK, RFK, 9/11, and Epstein, all have to do with fucking Israel. So now you see why the great noticing is happening. Failure from the government, coupled with big influencers filling the void, coupled with big podcasts that platform this void. What the fuck do you think is going to happen, chat? Now, from them appearing on these podcasts and awareing a bunch of Americans, the damage control is here. Hence, this fucking article that I'm reading for you guys right now. Give me ones in the chat if that makes sense, guys. Are we cooking tonight or what, chat? I don't think I've ever had heard anyone explain it like that. Why this is happening, the Great Awakening, and kind of strumming it together for you guys in one succinct sentence, or sorry, story. All right, so that was Candace Owens. Now let's see here what Andrew Tate, which I'll be honest with you guys, this is a stretch because I'll keep it 1,000 with you guys. Like, Andrew doesn't really focus on this topic of them boys, but let's see what they got to say. Andrew Tate is a practical spouser of everything you thought was good is actually bad approach, one that has proven wildly effective among those who aren't ready getting satisfactory answers from mainstream institutions. Tate is a controversial internet personality, former kickboxer and self-styled entrepreneur who gained fame for his outspoken views on masculinity, success, and relationships. He promotes hyper-masculine individualistic philosophy and emphasizes financial independence, self-discipline, and dominance in personal and professional life. He often speaks about the Matrix, a metaphor for societal control, and that he sees a system designed to keep men weak and dependent. His rhetoric frequently challenges feminism, modern relationships, and what he views as the decline of traditional masculinity. And then, of course, she had to add in here, he was also an alleged sex trafficker, which he denies. But along with his broader trust nothing they tell you attitude, Tate sounds like Owens. America believes it has free speech. It doesn't, he insists, because you cannot speak out against the Jews. Want to be a real man? Whine about Jesus, Tate? Want to really prove that you are as free as you do, please? Raise a sig hell. It's just a Roman salute. Okay, so she's quoting what he said, I think, on a thing. This part of the video, right, marches in lockstep. On March 6 alone, Owens appeared on Theo Von. Ian Carroll appeared unabashed. Israel did 9/11 conspiracist. Appeared on Joe Rogan, and Tate appeared on Full Sun podcast. Look, guys, I didn't read this article before, but this hit piece obviously is making its rounds because even Candace Owens mentioned this thing. Boom. So she posted, imagine the reaction if Christian wrote an article calling for Jews to be expelled from anything. This is really just so wild. So she posted this. And of course, I had to go over there. Of course, her pinned tweet is about that event. But we get pretty damn good engagement on here on X, bro. We're #1 with the likes. Pro tip for you guys, this is how you get grow your X, by the way. Always reply to big accounts. And if you get to the top of the comment thing, people are going to see you first. So, but this is the article that we're reading. So, okay. All three discuss some version of nefarious influence of the Jews in Israel, and all three noticeably toned down the heat of their rhetoric compared to with past podcast appearances. Owen's husband, the son of a British lord, is personally close with Tate, who she then hosts on her show in defense. She also often sources her anti-Semitic claims from Carroll, compounding their reach. This is not by chance. This is a coordinated attempt to cross-amplify conspiracy thinking and cater to the most paranoid and conspiratorially minded denominator. Then there is Tucker Carlson, the godfather of the new right. Carlson is the thought leader of what James Lindsay, a public intellectual whose polemics focus on ideological movements, has taken pejoratively and accurately calling the woke right, a group of thinkers with the same structural critique of society as the intersectional left. Basically, the woke right, guys, is a way to criticize people on the alt/far right. The intersectional left believes that society is unfairly structured to benefit certain groups while oppressing others. They thus infer that seemingly neutral values like free speech or colorblindness are nothing more than a ruse for the benefit of entrenched powers. Therefore, radical changes are needed to fix this. The so-called woke right also believes society is unfairly structured, but they think the unfairness goes in the opposite direction. They claim that elites, progressives, globalists, and increasingly Jays have rigged the system against regular people like conservatives, Christians, or the working class. They also want radical changes to fix this. Carlson, firmly a bow tie wearing Republican establishment stiff at CNN and the Weekly Standard, at some point, I think she means Fox, at some point suffered a profound disillusionment with America and now presents the governing powers as one big lie, a hideous mask for what is really going on, which is really the opposite of what mainstream people think is good. This is why, This is why he will promote Daryl Cooper, a Holocaust denier, as the best and most honest historian in America, or run overwrought, cringe-inducing propaganda on his channel about the majesty of Moscow's bountiful supermarkets. It's all a lie anyway, so why not just join Putin in fighting the powers that be? Many young conservatives are up this creek without a paddle. They grew up in a very different environment from their parents. Yeah, because boomers are idiots. Boomers think Israel's our greatest ally. For young men in particular, there was also an ambient sense that progressivism, with the kind of the kind that Americans soundly rejected in November, demonized them in their masculinity in entertainment, school, and in employment. The disenfranchised and disenchanted always look for someone to blame. Many white men now believe that the world is out to get them, and sadly, most common outgrowth of that feeling across all histories and all time has been anti-Semitism. Currently, young conservatives feel distrust for most mainstream news figures, and they are often unaware how often, man, this woman sucks at writing, online content is bought and paid for by hidden actors who either wish to push a specific agenda or simply turbocharge existing divisions within American society. With traditional media institutions hemorrhaging money, viewership, and staff, it's imperative to understand that the new media voices are the new mainstream media, exploiting the constantly shifting sands that today exemplify the media landscape. No longer are conservatives the opposition. There's been a shift in power, culturally and politically. With it comes responsibility. The MAGA movement must celebrate its victories and realize what they mean. They've won. They are the culture, no longer the scrappy startup or the outsider. They must get their house in order and expel the most radical among their ranks, starting with the anti-Semites. They're scared, guys. You know? They're fucking scared, chat. The truth is getting out there, and they can't fucking handle it, man. September 11th, 2001. The time was roughly 1:30 p.m. I'm in 6th grade at Pulaski Middle School in New Britain, Connecticut. My English teacher, Miss Landry, who I remember to this day, I remember this all vividly. I'm sitting in class, and she's giving some kind of language arts lecture. The loudspeaker comes up and abruptly interrupts her. Hey, something terrible has happened in New York City. Out of an abundance of caution, we're going to end classes early. Buses are going to be here within 30 minutes. We're going to have an early dismissal. Everyone in the classroom cheers. Yeah, woo! We're all excited. Half day, yeah! Right? So I get on the bus. And, you know, everyone's all happy and excited. Mind you, this is 2001, guys. No cell phones. No one had social media. None of that crap. So no one knew what the fuck was going on. I get home, and I look, and my dad's sitting in front of the television watching the news. And I see that a plane hit the towers. And at this point, the buildings were down. The ground zero was completely cooked. The buildings are toppled. There's shit all over the place. And there's reporters on the ground reporting on what's going on. And I looked at my dad like, what the fuck's going on? And he tells me, hey, son, there's a terrorist attack. They don't know who it is. We don't know what's going on. And I remember, like, going to my room, putting my backpack away, saying, what the fuck? And I just like went back and I just sat in the living room with my dad. And we just watched the news the whole day. And not too long after, I can't remember if it was days or weeks or whatever, they figure out that a guy named Osama bin Laden was behind the attack. Right? And everyone was like pissed off. I've never seen the country more united, right? And again, I'm like an 11-year-old, like looking at this stuff. And I remember all of this vividly in my head as I'm recalling this for you guys. I remember that, you know, they said, okay, we're going to go after these fucking guys. We're going to, you know, we're going to go after everyone that was involved. And you fast forward, and next thing I know, they're talking about Iraq. And obviously, no one really questioned it back then. The news cycle was constantly about how Saddam Hussein is bad. He was linked to 9/11, weapons of mass destruction. Bush was giving speeches, right? He had the iconic clip where he was at ground zero, right? And someone said, we can't hear you, when he was there with his megaphone, right? Because he was there with the megaphone at ground zero in plain civilian clothing. And they're like, someone said, hey, we can't hear you. And he's like, well, the people that did this are going to hear you, and they're going to hear all of us. And obviously everyone started cheering and all this other shit, right? It's a very iconic moment, right? But now looking back, years later, decades later, at the news cycles, at the mainstream media, at all the stuff, the Bush speeches, etc., it was all propaganda to substantiate the war in Iraq. Then I become an adult and I figure out that Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden hated each other. For those that don't know, when Iraq invaded Kuwait and, put Saudi Arabia in a strange position, Osama bin Laden offered to bring his mujahideen to go fight Saddam Hussein. But the Saudi royal family said, no, it's fine. We got the United States. The United States is going to protect us. And this was done from a deal that Nixon struck in the 70s for the petrodollar. Do all of your oil transactions in US dollars and we'll protect you forever. That's basically the deal that Nixon struck in the 70s. So Saudi Arabia has guaranteed protection from the United States, and it's been that way for decades. So obviously this pissed Osama bin Laden off. Why the fuck are you letting infidels protect Arab land? This is unacceptable. Well, the Saudi government doesn't do well with criticism. Ask Khashoggi. So what did they do? They didn't kill Osama because his family is extremely wealthy. A lot of people don't know that Osama bin Laden's family is actually responsible for building much of Saudi Arabia. When Osama bin Laden was charged by the FBI, he was like a multi-millionaire, right? They banished him to Sudan, Osama bin Laden. And then obviously the Mujahideen turned into Al-Qaeda and the rest is history. But the point I'm trying to make here is this. The guy who orchestrated 9/11, alongside Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, didn't like Saddam Hussein at all. So it didn't make sense for us to go to war in Iraq. Obviously, I find this out later, 2020 hindsight as an adult. But back then, the government did a great job of making us believe that the Iraqi government worked alongside Al-Qaeda to coordinate 9/11. And the Iraqi war, guys, is a perfect example, one of the chief examples of how mainstream media had a monopoly on the minds, hearts, and souls of Americans in the early 2000s. There was no alternative media back then. If you didn't hear it on Fox, CBS, or ABC News, it didn't happen. Alex Jones was new to the game. All right? David Icke, new to the game relatively. 90% plus of Americans got their news from the mainstream media. So clearly, people have woken up and realized that the mainstream media can sell you a lie and get us involved in a war that we shouldn't have been involved in the first place and lead to the death of 1 million people with almost zero strategic benefit for the United States. And then when you find out why we went to war in Iraq and who benefited, guys? It was Israel. They destabilized Saddam Hussein, one of their worst adversaries, got him out of power. Iraq hasn't been the same since. And now 80% of their oil comes from Iraq. So Israel got the majority of the benefit from the destabilization of Iraq, as with in many other Arab countries. As much as people hate dictators, the dictators maintain some semblance of stability in the region. Why do you think Syria is in shambles now? What's going on in Syria now is exactly what went down in 2003 with Saddam Hussein. And then you do some more research, and then you find out that the Clean Break Memo in 1996, authored by neocons, laid this all out perfectly. And it's happening now. And the last country left that's on that list is Iran. So when this woman writes this article saying that people are becoming radicalized and people don't want to trust the mainstream media and that this new media is taking shape, right, and it's anti-Semitic or anti-Israel or whatever fucking term she wants to use, I mean, let's be honest. The mainstream media lied to us for decades, got us involved in wars that we shouldn't have been in, and led to the death of hundreds of thousands of Americans in the Middle East for no reason. So yes, people are going to be skeptical of the fucking mainstream media now because we're finding out that they lied to us. Their monopoly on journalism and news coverage impeded our ability to know what the fuck really happened. This is why Americans are fighting so hard to get the JFK, 9/11, and Epstein files. We know we've been lied to. And it's more apparent now than ever before. So when people like this dumbass chick here, who is a remnant of the mainstream media, by the way, for the Daily Beast, tries to sit there and tell you, oh, well, this new media, like they're radical, blah, blah, blah. No one's fucking buying it anymore. The more they try to sit there and say, oh, these guys are radical, these guys are conspiracy theorists, etc., conspiracy theorist is nothing more than someone that was dead on about something that happens later on.